Welcome. I'm James Callicutt, waterfowl and upland game bird extension specialist.
I'm Mark McConnell, assistant professor of upland birds at Mississippi State University.
Dr. Brian Davis, professor, waterfowl and wetlands conservation.
The three of us are all biologists and hunters. Join us for discussions about game bird conservation and management and the science behind it. Of course, we'll also have conversations about bird dogs and bird hunting as well. This is Gamebird University. All right, Mark, this is our first episode of Gamebird University podcast. You and I have been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm excited about it. I don't know about you.
More or less.
More or less. Yeah, well, I'm not really all that happy to have to talk to you all this much anyway.
I was going to say, I haven't seen you enough already this week, yeah.
But no, yeah, our plan for this, of course, we're also going to have Dr. Brian Davis be another host on this show. So kind of rotate through, depending on who our guest is, you know, who we might have hosting the show at the time. But on this, Mark, you know, we're planning on talking about anything related to game bird management, science, and of course, you know, hunting as well in that. But with game birds, that's anything you can pursue during an open hunting season. So I expect us, you know, obviously we're going to talk a lot about waterfowl because that's going to be, you know, what everybody wants to talk about, and then we have time.
Not everybody, but yeah.
Yeah. Then we're gonna you know, talk about your quail and that sort of thing. And but no, quail. Seriously, quail, turkey, mourning doves, woodcock, and everything in between. If you can chase it during a hunting season, it's on the table for discussion. So I'm pretty pumped about it. We got a lot of great guests that we've already kind of had some recordings with, and so I'm pumped about it. I think it's gonna.
Yeah, let's address the real issue here. We recorded an initial episode, and then what was the audio sucked or something?
Yeah.
So we're redoing this. In full disclosure, we've got 5 or 6 episodes recorded, and we're retroactively going back and doing this, which is fine. But yeah, like you said, the whole goal of this, I think, is talk about not just one taxon, not just one group, everything on the fancy logo that our communications person, Angel Parrish, put together for us, did a great job on. And those are just some of the more iconic and prettier ones. But yeah, I don't care if we're talking about rails or hunting gallinules or anything. The goal, when you and I were talking earlier, was to make this diverse so we never run out of topics. And, you know, obviously there's more research on waterfowl and turkeys and quail than there's going to be on woodcock or mourning doves or some of the other stuff. But yeah, it ought to give us plenty to talk about, and maybe it's a lot of species not all the other podcasts are covering as much. So that's the
Yeah, I'm shocked that there's not a rail podcast or gallinules, you know.
Well, if this one goes well, then maybe we branch off, you know, if
yeah.
there's so interest in rails and gallinules. You're the only one in this episode that's ever hunted those. Well,
yeah.
I did it one time with you. We took Dad.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't shoot anything. I think we shot some snipe, maybe.
Yeah, we did. We were at the tail end of the season where snipe kind of overlapped with it. I remember that. Not a single sorrel rail was harmed during it, but definitely had a few snipe. So that was good. But
not seen any coots, as I recall.
Yeah. Houston Havens and I have hunted gallinules and rails, mostly gallinules. So yeah, we're the experts on it. We could have a Gallinule University podcast.
Well, that brings up something I just thought about. That you and I, when we were making our big list of all the episodes to do, we should do a coot episode.
You should.
Because I know I've shot plenty of coot for my dog, and I'll eat them. You know, they don't bother me. But I doubt there's coots are a topic. I don't know if DU has had a coot episode yet, but on their podcast. But maybe ask Brazier. That's what we should do.
Yeah.
Get Brazier on here to come talk about American coots.
We'll see if he'll come on for that. I don't know if Mike will do that or not. Like, well, once you come on, he'll probably be like, oh yeah, I'd love to be on there, and be like, well, we're gonna talk about coots.
Has anyone ever tagged a coot like with a telemetry or?
I don't know if they have or not. To be honest, I don't know if this is a bad thing. What this says about me as far as a duck biologist, but I've certainly never gone into Google Scholar or anything and searched American coot.
Well, we should probably mention, for people that don't know us, kind of our background just a little bit, so people don't think we're just completely full of it. Since I'm younger, I'll go first. So I'm a formerly trained quail biologist, did most of my research on northern bobwhite, and did a lot of work in conservation ag and some of that stuff. But did have a short stint at UGA where I was doing waterfowl research, published a few duck papers, but definitely don't consider myself a waterfowl biologist. And then here at Mississippi State, branching into plenty of grassland bird work, a little bit of turkey work, trying to get some woodcock work going, as you and I have talked about, You and I've got a dove project, so I've published some papers on rough grouse, bobwhite, grass and birds, so a couple duck papers. So try a game bird, a ranging game bird ecologist is how I generally describe myself. If I could just do bobwhite research, I certainly would, but branch out as is necessary. The one thing I think that probably surmises both of our careers a little bit is just doing research in kind of working systems, working landscapes. I've done work in pine forests, pasture lands, timberlands, agricultural lands, but that's where most of the private land is. That's where most of the critters are going to spend their time. That's, in my opinion, that's where most of the research is needed. And I think probably you and I both careers. I mean, I know we've both done research on public land as well, but we recognize the importance of private lands for game bird management.
Yeah, and I took quite a bit of a different path through my career up until this point than Mark did. After I finished grad school here at Mississippi State, and Mark and I were going through at the same time and were roommates together back in those days. So that says a lot about what I can put up with. But now after graduation, I went and worked for Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks as a waterfowl migratory game bird biologist for them for many years, flying aerial waterfowl surveys, banding ducks and doves, and meeting with private landowners, giving technical guidance on how to improve their properties for waterfowl. And from there, moved on to Ducks Unlimited, kind of managed private lands conservation programs for them for several years. That's where I really did a lot of work within working lands, a lot of rice agricultural conservation projects and conservation easements and things like that. Just doing a lot of conservation delivery and working with partnerships to help enhance our capabilities of delivering and doing outreach on programs like wetlands reserve programs or any other types of opportunities for landowners to engage in conservation. And then finally kind of found myself back in Starkville and extension and this game bird extension role. So get to be back in engaged in research. Have to work with Mark again, but that's all right. And so getting to do some cool stuff and having a cooler job than Mark. And so what can you ask more than that?
I was just going to say, if you didn't say it, your job description is a little cooler than mine. I won't deny that. But it also reflects, James's position here is quite unique. We have two endowments here at Mississippi State. We have the Kennedy Endowment for Waterfowl and Wetlands, and we have the Kennedy Upland Bird Endowment. We actually have three, and then we have the Jimmy Bryan Endowment for quail habitat restoration. So James has the unique job description of being the extension person to kind of help support the extension side, but also supporting the research side of both endowments. So my endowment is in upland birds and quail, so he gets to help with that, and then Dr. Davis's Brian's is in waterfowl and wetlands, so he gets to help that. So he gets the best of both worlds. He can interchange between a duck biologist and a game bird biologist whenever he wants, which not everybody gets to do that. So I got off the duck train as soon as I got here. Enjoyed it. Like I said, I was doing ringneck duck research down at UGA, and I liked it, but it's weird, if you're not studying a species you're just crazy passionate about, it's just not as fun. I mean, I love ducks, and I love shooting ducks, and you and I have chased ducks all over the country, in addition to some other birds. But, man, if you gave me $1 million to do duck research or quail research, I'd take the quail research any given day, and I suppose you do the opposite.
Yeah. for sure. Now, I like you.
The reason I was late today was really your fault.
It was.
Checking a teal hole, because what are we at, September 27th today? I was checking a teal hole to see if it had any water in it, but like most of the southeast right now, except maybe Georgia, because they're getting deluged with that something right now, some hurricane going through Georgia right now. It's Cat 4 when it did. Everybody else is just bone dry, so walked all the way out there, got chiggered up, and just water in the channel, no water outside the bank. So I don't know how people are doing have gone with the early teal season down in the deep south right now, but I haven't seen a lot on Facebook posted about it. Yeah,
I was going to say that's where a lot of if you're not able to get out and go yourself, usually the proportion of your you get on Facebook or Instagram, and if you're not seeing a lot of pictures of people holding up blue wings, I guess it's not going that well out there. But like I was telling you the other day when we were just having coffee, we're kind of discussing teal, and I was like, that is the one thing I can say as a duck biologist that I poorly understand. I think we poorly understand in general is all the things that influence teal migration. I mean, they obviously just, when they finish up their wing molt shortly after that, they're booking it to come here. They're not waiting on weather or anything like that. And, talking a bird that has a very, very long way to go, because we're just kind of a pit stop. We're the terminus of the migration for most other duck species. But I mean, they're going to go. A lot are going to winter in coastal, Gulf coastal states in the U.S. But they're going to Central, South America. Even so on that way down, just from all the teal seasons I've hunted over the years, I think about how different every one of them has been, and there's no real way to capture. Okay, well they were here this day, and we're going tomorrow morning, and then they're just not there, or sometimes it works out and they're there. But hurricanes and associated tropical storms after they when those hurricanes kind of dampen into tropical storms, they move through our latitude and dump a bunch of rain on us or whatever. What all that does to birds, does that push them out, or does that just spread them out? Because now you went from a landscape, there's maybe some sheet water in some places or whatever, it recedes rather rapidly because it's hot as hell. That stuff's soaking up because it's been dry a lot prior to it. But I don't know. There's lots of things that could be going on there, and I just don't I don't think there's a lot of wealth of research on it as far as
I thought old Mitch Wiegman was going to tag some back in not too long ago. I don't remember what happened with that, or if they concluded that project or not, or maybe I can't remember. I was hoping. I remember I was talking to him about it, and I was saying something like, "Man, God, I hope you figure these birds out because they are just infuriating when you're at this latitude." So we're going to start with Mississippi for those of you who don't know where Mississippi State is. Yeah, just blink in, blink out. I don't ever remember just being like, "Oh, there's been teal here for 2 weeks,"
Yeah.
Because you and I have had, I know public land, 2 really good hunts, and then probably some scattered okay hunts. What was the one a few years ago? Is that Manna?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one we didn't shoot very well, but we had plenty of opportunities, I recall. That was the most blue wings. I've lived in this state for on and off, 16 years?
Yeah.
Gaps in between. That was the most teal I've seen in the state at one time. That was impressive for me, because I haven't done aerial surveys or anything. So
Yeah.
that was a lot. But then the other one we had, I think, was on Muscadine a couple years. It was how many years ago? It was 2012.
Yeah. It was quite a while ago.
Rain was 2 years old. That was her. And that one, it wasn't a whole lot of action. If I remember, we got most of those. The limit was 4 that year, so we killed 8. But it was like almost 90% of that was that one group that just came in.
Yeah.
And it was, oh God, they were just shoot up. Because I remember, I think we had a dove mojo maybe.
Yeah.
And they were just like hovering by it. But if you remember those birds, they were emaciated.
Oh yeah.
Like when you grabbed them, you could we call it the keel. It was like this versus like this. So I'm assuming that means they probably just arrived. I mean, they have not been here long enough to rebuild any reserves.
Yeah, and their diet during that time is quite a bit different than, just because the food availability at that time is mostly bugs, it's not a tremendous amount of seeds that are available and that sort of thing. So
they were
not a lot of opportunities to pack on fat along that route, I don't imagine.
Yeah. That may be those 2, and then I've had a couple of really good ones on also public land, but not the WMAs. Yeah, it reminds me, talking about seeing a lot of teal. When I was at UGA, we were riding on the airboats and night lighting these ringnecks. So you're dipping out on an airboat with a spotlight. Some of the most fun field work I've ever done. Like just driving around at night, ducks everywhere, just well managed places, and you're just literally. You gotta have a really good airboat driver and a really good spotlighter, just literally dip netting ducks out of the thing. And we were on this area, I probably shouldn't say where it was, but let's just say it was somewhere in South Carolina, and it was a flooded ag kind of stuff. And then we got into this area that was just obvious, well-maintained, moist soil. I mean, the vegetation changed, everything changed. And I didn't know this because I'd never night lighted ducks before, but they don't fly off. They just kind of skirt up and get back down. So and I don't know if it's because it's dark or the airboat's too fast, but I don't know what it is. They don't really want to leave. So we're going through this stuff, and there's vegetation everywhere, and we're seeing some ringnecks, but we're not really in the big raft ringnecks. And all of a sudden, we hit a patch. I don't remember the grass, but it was some seed-bearing grass, and the amount of green wings in that stuff at night was absolutely insane. And I hate to be those people that exaggerate numbers, because you and I used to always complain about people, oh, that's 2,000 ducks. You don't know, unless you're a trained observer. But dude, it was hundreds, if not thousands of green wings, and they would not leave. All they would do was skirt out right outside the edge of the airboat and then dip down. And then you look back and they pop right back up just eating seeds.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And I remember thinking like that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like I'm on an airboat at night with a dip net in my hand, and I could have easily gotten 10 to 15 in a scoop. I mean, they were that big. They were butt to butt, just muddling around in there. And then of course we got out of that and got a little deeper water. That's where we found ringnecks and dipped those. They call them 30 ringnecks that night. But Mitch Teal just got me thinking about that. So I don't know if you ever need a way to promote moist soil units and their benefit to ducks. Man, if I'd had a GoPro on them, so that would have been something else. They were just stacked. It wasn't just teal, right? There were gadwalls and stuff too, but it was mostly green wings. I know you're the moist soil man, so you can probably put that in context. But
oh yeah, well that's another thing too. I think I am encouraged by that. A lot of it seems like nowadays way more so than when I started my career and like talking to landowners. We're seeing to get people are turned on to that importance of moist soil. Your average, landowners that you meet with nowadays, they've heard of it at least, and a lot of them are like really like, hey, I want to start doing this. I'm interested in doing that. And I had some cool, had a really good, some great questions at the waterfowl workshop that we did earlier this week, and asking about ag versus moist soil. We were talking about complete wetland complexes include all of those things, and trade-offs and when they use ag, and the importance of both of those on the landscape. But really thinking about some of the things we're facing with climate change and milder weather and stuff. I wonder if that will increase that importance of moist soil, because there's not gonna be a lot of time that they're gonna rely as far as provisioning goes. Like, do you need as much like standing crops and high energy foods if that need to forage on that doesn't come around as often? So does that even increase more so the importance of moist soil plants, because they're going to feed on those for all the other nutrients they get out of them, and they're either getting plenty of energy out of them, but like you may not have as much at times where that really super cold for a week or two is happening, where they're just getting into that high energy food source and really hammering on corn, and all that. Those happen less frequently. They hang out in moist soil way more often than having to go out and search and find some of those other food resources.
That's a good point, because there's, you would have had to have started this question 20 years ago, if not more, to really see a change, a shift. But there's so much, as you and I were just complaining about the other day, there's so much less flooded ag land on the landscape now in a lot of areas than there was 20 years ago for various reasons. In addition to less waste grain available, either due to efficiency of the equipment, combines, and or the fact that we're planting earlier and harvesting earlier. So in the lower Mississippi Valley, it's germinated again. Corn, regrowth corn's waist high by the time ducks get here, if not higher, under. So if you had like a static landscape and the only thing, and the amount of moist soil stayed the same, and you just let ag change how ag has changed in the last 25 years, and assuming comparable weather, so enough ducks coming down, yeah, man, I bet they are becoming more reliant on moist soil. If moist soil has stayed static on the landscape, again, that's something we don't track, right? Yeah. It's pretty easy to track crop and crop type, and as y'all are, and you and Dr. Davis are trying to dealing with now, and with Mel and Akil and everybody helping y'all, trying to map water on the landscape, that's hard enough. But good God, mapping moist soil is almost impossible.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think that, at least definitely with currently what we have available with us to try to do that, I don't think that's possible. So it'd be tough to see if we've lost some or if we've gained it. I mean, I hope we've gained more, that more folks are tuned into it, and that more people are recommending it and that sort of thing.
Well, it brings up an interesting point. Think about this. With all the complaints about ducks not coming down and whatever, and we've got Heath Hagee on from Fish and Wildlife Service on another episode. He'll talk about all that, because he's doing a lot of that work with some of his colleagues. But it makes you question, if people are upset. People in the quail world is why, when I don't have anybody near me that's going to put a mic on me or a camera on me, and somebody says, well, what happened to the quail, and they're moaning about left, right, and sideways, what you want to say is, well, what have you done? What have you done on your landscape? Have you lit a fire? Have you created habitat? Or are you just expecting everyone around you to do it for you so you can benefit from it? Because that's what people got away with in the quail world, and probably the duck world, for a long time. Those days are over in the quail world, right? The people that have quail are the people that have a lot of quail, people trying to get quail.
Yeah.
Trying to do it, you're not getting any. So I won't name this hunting club, but there was a hunting club in a lower MAB state, and I was hunting there some years ago, and in the blind, all they were doing was complaining about, it was everybody's fault on the planet, right? it was either, everybody used to love to play BU. That was really popular in the early 2000s, late 90s. I remember those days. They were heating water and all this stuff. Then it's the feds, right? The feds don't want you to kill a duck, so they're doing something to you. Then it was the state. They're keeping those ducks on the WMA, so they can't come to you. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You ever want to ask those people, so on your property, what have you changed to get more ducks?
Yeah.
Have you flooded more acres? Have you worked with your farmer to do something? Or have you tried to shift gears and say, you know what, this flooded ag stuff's getting less and less reliable because there's less and less food available. Why don't I go find a club where they'll invest in moist soil? And you won't find a single club that'll acknowledge they've done that. I'm sure some have, but that should have been the shift 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Fredericton would say it should have been the shift 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Flooding
Wholeheartedly agree.
a bean field that was cut in August, and then wonder why when ducks do get here, you don't kill more than 5 shovelers when you go out.
Yeah. But I will say I am all for you flooding that bean field, but
Sure.
you need to be doing something else, to attract birds. Yeah. Because to me, that's what I tell folks about flooded ag. I always talk about, especially harvested agricultural fields, to all your points that you mentioned earlier about how little food availability is in there for all those reasons. And it's probably gotten worse and worse over time since we last time made any measurement of that. And it wasn't like we've talked about before. It wasn't good then, so it's probably way worse now. But that showy open water can attract birds into a landscape. I think that's certainly something that it's providing that value. And they do use them for loafing, and they use them for, that in more open water, a lot of species, that's where a lot of courtship kind of activity is going on. So I think that they provide something to the landscape. I always say, a lot of those flooded ag fields, they, like I said, they do use them, but I think that showy water and all that helps attract birds to a landscape. A landscape's got a lot of water, it's going to attract birds. But then it's the diversity and composition of all those wetlands on its capacity to hold there. Yeah. So I think those flooded ag fields are providing habitat, they are providing attractiveness to a landscape, but you got to have the scrub, the forested, and the moist soil to really fulfill all those other biological requirements and hold them in a landscape.
Yeah, and I'm coming down hard on duck hunters. A lot of them are leasing a property they have no control over. The management. So that's not fair. I'm ranting as much as they do at this point. But if we can convince enough of the public that, hey, maybe don't pay $15,000 for a pit blind and a bean field if that's all that's around you, and maybe prioritize and put some pressure on some landowners to kind of increase their investment in other parts of their property from a hunting standpoint. Mm-hmm. I think there'd be a lot duck hunters could benefit from that.
Yeah.
And like I said, we've all sat there in pit blinds where you just go in and you're like, it's gonna have to be a brand new duck coming straight out of somewhere north of here that just doesn't know any better. Just gonna try this out. And
it's gonna better be a flight day.
Better be a flight day, because like we do it a lot with the Southeast for a lot of the duck season. We get some ducks, and we're sitting on those ducks for a hot minute. Mm-hmm. And it's and I know he's going to talk about this too with you and Brian, but without some refugia or some place to kind of not be harassed by hunters and get shot at, that's an important component too. The other thing I was going to mention about moist soil, just so we can get off these freaking ducks for a minute. In a lot of
they provide good quail habitat in the summertime.
Well, we don't have a lot of well documented. There's not a lot of research on it. But yes, I was going to mention that well drained, those really ephemeral and disturbance driven plant communities, especially in Mississippi, and I know parts of Arkansas, and I know parts of Missouri, and I know Louisiana especially, where I've seen they can generate a bunch of quail. Those moist soil units, when you draw that water down, essentially that's a really diverse plant community with a lot of seeds that attracts a lot of insects, and there's generally sufficient amount of bare ground to attract quail. So we see quail in them, we hear quail in them. I was doing surveys on a property in central Louisiana last year, seven males singing in one spot in an area that's managed for waterfowl.
Yeah.
There was a place over here in Morgan City I was listening to not too long ago, not the Louisiana Morgan City, but the Mississippi Morgan City. And the only cover on that property was moist soil management. I think driving around for an hour and a half, I think I heard 10 different bobwhites singing. So in the lower Mississippi Valley, I think moist soil units are an unappreciated benefit to quail. We don't have any real research on it. I think Heath Hagee published a paper a few years back looking at maybe grassland bird communities in Louisville. I can't remember. I don't remember if quail was in there or not. I don't remember what state they did it in. Must have been Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know he certainly didn't look at any of it while he was here, but we talked about that. We talked about that a lot because there was one component of his dissertation work where we were doing some stuff in the summertime, trying to set some things up for some of his winter field work, and the whole time we were out there and on multiple refuges in the Delta where we were where we had study plots, we were hearing Bob White's singing while we were out there, and so that was the first time, he and I were really started talking about, well, these things might be pretty decent if there's some, especially from that just, brooding cover, I would imagine for sure.
In the Mississippi Delta, there's not much quail cover anyway. Just about anything halfway useful they'll find if they're in the landscape is what we've seen. But it's interesting because I get calls every year and pictures because people just find my phone number and text it to me. People say, hey, it's always somewhere in the lower Mississippi Valley, somewhere ag dominated, and they're like, hey, I just started hearing quail. And I haven't heard quail in 20, 30, 40, you pick the decades of years. And it's always one of two things. It's always either somebody recently started doing some moist soil management. I'd say that's 35 to 40% of the cases. The other, whatever that remainder is, 60 to 70%, is CRP, new CRP or WRP or WRE, whatever we call it now, because the alphabet soup always changes, is somebody coming in and doing something in the name of wetland restoration that for a brief period of time on the WRE CRP side, on a brief period of time produces a fairly weedy annual, some perennial grass community that quail just explode on.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them, I'll say, hey, that's great. Is it one of these two things? And it's usually one of those. And then actually a couple times it's been cover crops. And then John Mark's going to get mad at me if I'm promoting cover crops. They're good for quail. We don't know yet, but we do have some anecdotal information that their properties that are using are hearing some birds. But yeah, it's one of those two things. And we tell them, hey, if it's CRP or WR or hardwood planting, enjoy it while it lasts. It's not going to last forever. When those trees get high enough and shade out that understory, it's gone. So you may have, depending on the site, the first couple of years through maybe year 10, sometimes 12, depending on if you have mortality or anything like that. But that's what's keeping those birds in a lot of those really ag-dominated landscapes in the lower Mississippi Valley, which is just fascinating. That it's wetland restoration, for better or worse, that's probably keeping birds on that landscape. There ain't a whole lot of quail activity in that part of the world.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, on the WRE side, like you said, and I know that benefit is short-lived, and once that kind of comes away, those trees start growing and gets out of that early successional stage. But yeah, if you had some moist soil, and then there's just probably, I don't know. I'm not a quail biologist. I just pretend to be one from time to time. I'm getting there. I'm trying to be.
Yeah.
But like, how much actual of that cover do you need to have enough birds to where you'll hear them, on from that point forward, unless something happens to them. But because I remember I heard them on that, my place with the bio running through it.
Yeah.
When we hunt ducks on quite a bit. That when that CRP stand next door was really young, and we had a lot of low areas along that bayou that were more or less maintained in early successional stuff. It was a good long while that we heard them. I haven't been out there during the summer in a while, but even after that CRP got up, we apparently still had enough, and it didn't seem like much early successional cover that we were still hearing them,
Well,
it seemed like a very resilient bird.
and I don't take away John Mark's credit because the episode we did with him was tremendous, but he makes just as a teaser, makes a tremendous comment about what attracted him to doing devoting his career to Bob White was just people talk about they're lost cause. God, they're so freaking resilient. Now at a population level, yeah, they've declined just tremendous 80+% amount across their range, but the fact that you do one little thing in the Delta of Mississippi and they pop up. It's like, holy smokes, where did you come from? Randy Wilson and I think I told you this story years ago. Because Randy's not retired yet. Yeah, he's still.
Yeah, he's still out there doing stuff.
Oh, I don't know if he was trying to. We were at a quail meeting. I doubt Randy will ever listen to this, but he should remember this. We were at a quail meeting, and the day's meeting was over, so we were just having a beer and eating dinner. And we were trying to figure out why quail responded so quickly and so dramatically to any real effort in the Delta. because he's a micro bird guy. He knows all about plantings and stuff they're doing, and it's mostly, let's be honest, it's mostly hardwood restoration, right? And we were just joking, like, I mean, what are they doing? Just waiting in the ditches and dodging mowers until somebody plants some trees, and they go, oh, boom, and then they go find it. And how do they, like, how many are on the landscape? Because we don't count for them. We don't see them as much. You had the rural mail carriers. That was some of the most reliable quail index abundance data, was because they were walking these routes and hearing quail, and you don't see a whole lot of that anymore. So it's like, where were these birds until this happened? My brother-in-law farms in the Arkansas Delta, and he tells me, he's like, these properties where they just got a weedy ditch, and he's always got a covey on it. And it's like, man, how long can they live on that ditch?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm sure they venture out into the fields, once the crops are up.
Yeah.
There ain't a whole lot there either, Ain't a whole lot of insects in a bean field like there was 60 years ago.
No.
By design,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
What other critters are we going to talk about with this podcast? We got woodcock.
Mm-hmm.
The listeners will get for that from the south. But
I don't know, but I sure do like those little birds. They intrigue me, so we're going to talk about them whether everybody wants to listen about them.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll pick up some more.
They should intrigue everyone.
They should.
We don't have to debate all day whether they're worth eating or not, but they should intrigue everyone, and they are a fascinating bird to pursue with a dog. And man, I hope we can get some research and tag some pretty soon, because I think between you and I, we've got 5 or 6 different questions about not only just their migration, which some of that's being studied around the country, but what they do when they're down here. As we talked about trying to get Dave Crimmins on here, he's about the only one to study any real hardcore research in the South about him in the last 30 years. So that'd be cool, man. That is an interesting bird. And some people call them timberdoodles, or some people call them wood snipe,
Yeah.
as we've heard recently. But yeah, man, for a bird that is so cryptic and so just unique, yeah, I would love to know more about them. I mean, there's plenty of research on them over the years, but just not a lot of it's been down here that's been real fine scale and kind of what they're doing. The big question I want to know is, you and I were talking about, was it last year when we never really got a real hard freeze? No.
No, it was the year before, wasn't it?
No, well, I don't remember, but maybe the year before.
It was. That around Christmas we got a really bad cold spell the year before last.
Yeah.
And we went from finding a few birds, a decent number of birds. We were moving a decent number to nothing. And do they move further south, or do they go just in the interior?
Because a week after that winter storm, it was back to 60 degrees. So. So yeah, I want to know more about that. Of course, the year we probably put some radios on them will probably just be a normal weather year, and we won't learn jack.
Well, we missed the boat on that. Last year would have been they would have probably not made it here in very much abundance, I would imagine.
No. Well, I think last year was the year Ollie shot 2 in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
The one was with you, or both of you.
Yeah.
Or was it just that one? The one that flew right, we walked by.
Yeah.
And then it got
it was in the open too, which was weird.
It was really weird. It was on a grass field.
Yeah. Just in some broom sedge out there, like not at all what you would constitute woodcock habitat.
It's not what you would consider diurnal cover, no.
Yeah.
But traditionally,
getting anxious, was ready to go ahead, didn't want to wait till dark, just got on out there.
It would have been nice if one of the dogs would have pointed it, but not that selective yet.
No. And my young setter was probably 100 yards away when it happened, so.
She was stretching her legs, yeah. Woodrow missed it too, though.
Yeah, that's true. But I didn't go
down there, and then there was that one up in that other spot I always find them in. But that was a no early season bird, and I didn't have hardly any luck after that.
Yeah, and I don't know a whole lot about them as far as, like with ducks, we're getting, better and better information all the time. Mike Schumer, who we're going to have on the podcast later to talk about duck migration, he's done a tremendous amount of work in terms of weather and how that impacts duck migration, And so we got a pretty good handle, it seems like, or growing that body of evidence of, like, for particular species and whatnot, what weather variables really push those birds to move south. And, and for other birds like blue-winged teal, we know they just kind of leave, when it's time. So there's some kind of temporal migrants versus those that the weather impacts. But with woodcock, we really don't have a whole lot to know. Like, if it doesn't get, like, most of us will kind of stick with that. Like, it's going to have to get, we're going to have snow falling up north, to cover up fields. And so if they can't field feed, they got to move south. And then past that point, like the Boot Hill of Missouri needs to lock up and be in freezing temperatures for Arkansas and Mississippi and North Louisiana to really have mallards here. So we have that kind of that kind of a grasp on it. But for woodcock, it's like I don't know what severity of weather it necessitates to elicit a woodcock migration.
And I agree. And when I called Crimmins after I was really upset after that weird December frost a couple years ago, he said something pretty interesting to me. He said no weather they experience on the wintering grounds even compares to the volatility in the weather as soon as they get back on the breeding grounds. Because you think about that early kind of late winter, early spring kind of stuff, dramatic swing in weather. So I took that as all right. So these birds, maybe they don't move south for a little couple day freeze. The thing also is like the ground's got to freeze. If they can't probe. But what I don't understand unless I go out and check it in the morning, if it's been 20 degrees in Starkville for 3 days. Is the ground interior forest where a lot of real thick woodcock stuff, is that ground frozen? My yard's frozen, but my yard's not insulated by anything, right? So is the interior of say woodcock cover, is that frozen? Probably not. I mean, I know when I was hunting woodcock in Georgia when I was at UGA, I can remember hunting with snow on the ground, not much. We got a light dusting in North Georgia, and you go out to the place I used to woodcock hunt, and I kicked the ground. The ground was, it was cold, but it was not frozen. And of course, it was a rock, forest, So there was what's happening in the woods where the woodcock are, and what's happening out in the ag fields, like you're saying. That's two different things.
Yeah.
But that's another question. Like if it's not cold enough to push them south, they're hedging their bets, kind of waiting it out. Do they just stay in their diurnal cover? And for those of you, I keep saying this, woodcock generally are thought to have this nocturnal and diurnal kind of cover type, and how they spend their time in certain landscapes, the land cover type shifts. They forage at night more in open fields or pastures, maybe ag land, and then during the day they're in thicker, nastier, myriad of reasons, but they're foraging then too. So they're foraging in both. So the question is, if it gets cold enough not to push them down, but too cold to feed out in the field, do they just hang in the woods the whole day?
Yeah, I wondered that. At what point are they, because you think at night that ground can be frozen when it's not frozen in there, and can they hang out and just foraging in that daytime cover, the thicker stuff, for longer and help them just stay in that landscape longer.
What else we got? We got doves. We got Houston Havens come to talk to us about doves at some point.
Yep. And of course the waterfowl population numbers. We had Josh Best with Fish and Wildlife Service and the Prairie Pothole Region Joint Venture. Mississippi boy that was smarter than me and made his way to live in the Prairie Pothole region with abundant bird hunting recreational opportunities.
That's the way to do it right there. I really thought by hanging out with all you duck people in grad school, one of you would go move up there. And finally, just last year, somebody finally did.
It only took 17 years for Heath to move to North Dakota.
You stayed here. Columbo went to New York?
New York. Yeah.
Cheshire went to Alaska? I don't know.
Yeah.
Justin's in D.C. I mean, nobody went to a good duck hunting state.
Except for Heath.
Now finally, Heath finally.
Yeah. So we're gonna have to go up there at some point now that one of us has finally lived somewhere cool.
Well, we kind of pressured him. I thought it was after we were done recording, or if we were still recording. I think we were still recording.
Yeah, we're pressuring him for.
Well, I wanted to get it on the record, so he,
Yeah. So we're gonna hold him to that. We're gonna do a podcast episode from the blind, North Dakota. We're holding Heath Hagee to that. He said it. Y'all will hear it again when he says it later. This is let the record reflect that Heath Hagee said that.
If by next year you don't hear about it, we'll post his email, his work email. You can just fill up his work email with complaints.
Well,
I really hope Mark listen to this first episode.
I don't know. Hopefully he doesn't listen to it. He probably will. But we've got just those few that we've mentioned. We've got a lot of great episodes coming up, and I've got a lot more in mind. You do too, Mark, and Brian does. So we're gonna, like I said, with the diversity of game bird species that there are out there, we are gonna have no shortage of some really cool conversations to have, and I'm sure we're gonna, like we did today, probably mix hunting in a good bit. So it should be a lot of really fun conversations, and I'm excited for us to get to talk to all the cool people we're going to get to talk to about some birds that we're pretty passionate about. But we've been rambling on for 40 minutes, and I've hit my McConnell threshold for the day.
we're training bird dogs this weekend, so you'll see.
Yeah.
It. I mean,
Well, if I got to see you again in the next 2 days, and I don't get a weekend reprieve, we better cut this podcast episode short.
That's fine. One thing I did remember, I think we mentioned it in the first attempt at our intro episode. If we not, next time we're all three on with Brian, we need to talk about shovelers, and then I need to show that picture of that duck hunt with he and I, where he shot all the drakes and I shot all the ugly hens and a ruddy duck or two. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I just remembered that when I was thinking about our first attempt at this episode. Remind me to bring that up next time we're both on, with a guest or not, when Brian's here, so we can.
Yeah.
Because that man is a shoveler killing machine.
And only the pretty ones too.
Only the pretty ones.
He can somehow pick out full plume drakes.
6 shots.
Yeah, 6 shots and those 6 birds. I'll give him that. He does have that talent. But
Yeah. All right, then.
so I'll try to remind you to do that, and I'm sure we're gonna have all 3 of us talking duck hunting before too long. Because as I recall from that episode, we got off science for a good long time talking about hunting, as we tend to do. But
Which is good.
yeah, it was
That's
good.
what we're all doing this research for. You know?
Exactly. So, all right. Well, everybody, stay tuned for some more good episodes. And Mark, I guess I'll see you later this weekend.
Yeah. Luckily for you.
Yeah, such a fortunate individual. All right. See y'all next time. Thanks for joining us on Gamebird University Podcast. To keep up to date on when new episodes are dropped, or for more information on game birds and their management, you can follow us on Instagram at MSUEXT_Gamebird, or follow us on Facebook at MSU Extension Gamebird Program.